All right, so we're going to do a review of this challenge called School. We'll get as far as we can. I'm going to put a hard cap at 12, just because this particular one can take quite a bit of time. So I'm going to put a hard cap at 12. We'll see how far we get. So I'm here on my desktop. I'm going to clone School down. Put it up in Sublime. And I'm going to check out a new branch. Check out -B, John's branch. All right, let's take a look at what the instructions have us say. All right, so the goal of this is to use clean and flexible interfaces between objects, meaning I want to have one object talk to another object. So if I have two classes, how do they talk to one another? I want to practice using single responsibility to create cleanly implemented classes. So each class should do one thing. Every method should do one thing. Like again, single responsibility, everything is always a good idea. This is the idea that like one person has a specific job that they're really good at. So if you do your own taxes, like, all right, so my recommendation, if you do your own taxes, unless it's like very, very simple, don't do your own taxes. Because every year that I did my own taxes, I've had to pay money. I've always forgotten something here and there. I've always forgotten about something small and large. I was like, I'm definitely getting audited by the IRS. So the idea is like, an accountant does this every day. They're an expert. I'm going to rely on that expert to do their job well. I suck at doing that kind of stuff, but I can teach coding and I can code. But those are things that I know I can do well. So the idea is same thing when you're talking about your code. One class should do one thing really well. You know, your administrator should do one thing really well, and that's to be an administrator. Your teacher should do one thing to be a teacher. And use clear, effective naming conventions. All right. So the summary says we're building an interface for a school. The main components are the actual school, staff, janitors, receptionists, principals, teachers, and students. So there seems to be three things: school, staff, and students. Those are three classes I'm thinking of right off the bat. I have school, staff, and students. The goal of this challenge is to explore how object-oriented design can aid in the development process. You will be building multiple classes, and you'll have to define their interfaces. Interfaces just means like, how am I going to interact with this class? The expectations are very loose. So we're going to go out to the whiteboard. We're going to break it out and talk with a pair. We can go argue about names and have some fun. So first things first, release 0. We'll just do one release at a time, and we'll think through things together. We have school, staff. So we're going to write this code that will create a new school objects. What kind of attributes, accessors are needed? You'll need a name for the school, location, number of staff, number of students. Create the students. You'll be stored in a school database. Just have a way for the school to store local records. So I'm going to be reading and writing to a CSV most likely. Can you think of anything that might inherit from the school, or is inheritance not needed for the students? And then the staff, there's multiple types of staff. We were talking about janitors, receptionists, principal, and teachers. So we'll just keep those for now. All right, so I know that based off of this, I'm going to have at least 3 classes: a school class, a student class, and a staff class. So I'm just going to get started with those 3. Move it into different areas. So I'm going to have one called student.rb, school.rb, and staff.rb. Student, school, and then class staff. So we'll start with 1, and we'll talk about inheritance and stuff like that if it makes sense for us. Number 1, create the school. Write the code that will create a new school object. What type of attributes or accessors will be needed? I'll just dump it down here. So if I initialize, that this is the wrong place. Def initialize. What are some things that every school has? Okay, school name. Maybe a mascot. What else? Address. All right, so let's say our school is very simple. It just has a school name, a mascot, and an address. I'm gonna a little bit smaller for now. I'll just actually do it all in one. We'll do add a reader for school name, mascot, and address. I'm going to make all these instance variables: school name, mascot, and address. This one's pretty simple. We're done with this. Let's jump back. Create the students. The students are going to be stored inside the school database. Don't worry about creating the database. Just have a way for the school to store the student records. So as we're thinking through students, is there anything that they inherit from the school? Is there any relationship between a school and a student? Yes, I mean, there is a relationship. That is true. Do you think anything would be inherited? What do you think? Probably not. I don't think so, personally. That's my thought, at least. I'm sure someone can argue one way or the other. But there's not a ton of attributes or things that are common between a school and a student. Like a student does not share a school. I mean, I guess they all go to the school, but there's nothing that they really share. But let's take a look at this next one. We have staff in that case, or maybe we can just deal with students. What does every student have that you want to save inside of the, I think it actually says down here. Oh, actually, no, we can figure things out. So initialize.
The students had names.
Okay.
Had IDs,
first name,
passwords,
last name, and passwords. What else do they have? I think that's okay for right now. You can do whatever you'd like. I think in the end it was kind of like, please enter your. What's that?
So I just kind of went off of the CSV file, like what we had for everybody.
Sure. Let's take a look at what the CSV file says. Students.csv. We have name, sex, age, role, ID, and password. Perfect. We can actually just do all of that here. Now, what was my general rule when you have huge lists of stuff like this?
Hash.
Create this into a hash, because it's like, I thought usually when you look at a database, and we'll see more of this next week, the student ID generally comes first. So if you put it out of order, the name now becomes like 1. You know, your name is obviously not 1. So when I see stuff like this, I want to just have, I don't want to pass it in order like this, because I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 things. I only want to pass it in as a hash. So I will call it student information hash. And from there, I'll just do @name equals student information hash of name. Sex, age, role, student ID, and password. And then I can make all of these readers for now. We finished the student, and let's go back over here. We're going to talk about the staff. There's multiple types of staff, and you're free to create your own. A few examples are principal, teachers, teaching assistants, receptionists, and janitors. Do they have any attributes? Are they going to be different, et cetera, et cetera? So let's jump over to staff here. Now, I want you to take a look real quick between student and staff. I'm going to open them up side by side. And you want to talk about the relationship between students and staff. Is there anything that you can borrow from one class or the other? This is the thought. This is my thought process when I'm thinking about using inheritance. Is I have it's like, is there anything that I can borrow? Because I think all staff members they all need a name. They all need a sex, an age, a role. Maybe not student ID, so maybe that's not something I want to borrow. But then they also have a password. So there's a bunch of code that's already inside of student that I may or may not be able to use inside of staff. Again, I don't have to inherit. Like that's just, you don't have to. You just really don't need to do so. But if I actually inherited it from here, I now have the ability to create a new staff member with a name, sex, age, role, student ID, and password. And I can actually just put it directly into the staff without typing so much stuff out. But it's a little strange that a staff member inherits from a student. Maybe a student inherits from a staff member, or maybe they all inherit from like a school record of some sort. It's up to you. Or we can just have each class do its own individual thing. Nothing relies on anybody else. That's also fine.
Yeah, I think the way we did it was different because the role of the staff member would be a faculty role. The role of the student would be totally different.
Exactly. Yeah, it's not false. Yeah. So this role right here for all students, obviously the role is going to be a student, right? And for a staff member, the role could be different. It could be a principal, a teaching assistant, a teacher, a receptionist. So again, we have 3 different ways to do this. One is staff can inherit from student, student can inherit from staff, or the 2 of these together can inherit from a whole new thing called like a school record, something like that. It's up to you.
What would you do?
I'd probably do school record. Yeah. So I'd probably create a new class called school record.
But you wouldn't just put that in school as a method?
I could put it inside of school, but a school, like when I think about this class right here, a school is literally just like a brick building. This school has many students and has many staff members and has many student records, but the school on its own is literally just like a brick building most of the time.
So you can just create another class in this module? I didn't know we could just create.
You can create as many classes as you need. Yeah. So that's the thing. Like Ruby and programming in general is just kind of like, if you know what you need, like you can create as many classes as you need to solve your problem.
For the purpose of the module we're doing, I thought that you only have 3 classes. That would have made it easier if we could just create classes.
Yeah, you can definitely create classes among classes. Yeah.
That changes.
Yeah, it changes quite a bit. So this school record, when I create a new person, maybe I'll just grab all of this here. I will just call this record hash. Change all of this. This record hash, I'll just copy this whole line, just dump it here. Role, maybe I'll change this to ID number, password, and record hash. So I created a class called school record. And then whenever I create a new student, I'm going to inherit from school record. Whenever I create a new class, a staff person, I'm also going to inherit from school record. This way I can get rid of all this code. Because when you think about it, each individual class, like when you create a new student or you create a new staff, all of them are sharing this thing. They all need a name, sex, age, role ID number, and password. I changed the ID number because it used to say student ID, and that doesn't apply. That's not as apply quite as well. So how do I'm just going to test it. Let's see if I can create a new student. S equals student.new, and I'm just going to create a new hash. I'll call this record equals name is John. Sex is male. Is, let's say I'm 12. My role is a student. E number is 1. Password is password. All right. Let's see if this runs. So I'm going to run Ruby student.rb. No, student.rb? Am I in the wrong place? Where did I save this to? It's not even here. I messed up. Let's save as. Oh, I put it on the desktop. Hold on. Let's do this in the command line. CD, list everything. I got school record, staff, and student. I'm going to move school school anything. MV is for moving a file. MV school star means like anything that starts with school. I'm gonna shove it inside of school. I don't like you. What's happened here? Rename school. Whatever. I'll just move one file at a time.
Yeah, even nothing.
All right, you know what? just for time's sake. Staff, student.
I always have to look up how to do it.
And then I was like, what's the cleaner way? That's what I wanted him to show. Remember how we did in the initialize? We did it in one entire one. Like he did it differently. He initialized. We put it on the parameter initialize.
So this
And I was
is
asking the
good.
tutor how we could do it in a cleaner way. That's what I wanted him to show me.
Staff. So I can close this
You don't
one
remember
out.
how we initialized.
School record.
How we
I'm going
initialized
to
bank accounts.
delete this.
Yeah. Different from that way.
We initialize from CSV. Oh, right. This is
That's what I was asking from.
All right, so let's run this. Ruby, I'm going to cd into school, list everything out. Let's run ruby student.rb. All right, so it blows up. It says there's an uninitialized constant school record on line 1. On line 1, it says I inherit from school record, and it says it doesn't exist. So what's going on?
Require relative.
Require relative. Right, so this require relative basically is, the reason it blew up is because it was looking for a class called school record. Now inside of student, there's obviously no class called school record, but there's another file that has a class called school record. So I have to require that particular file. That's where this require relative is. I'm requiring a file relative to where I am right now called school record. So let's see if this works at this point. Ooh, undefined method pry. I need to require pry. I'm bringing in an external library. All right, let's take a look at student. Bam, we have a student with an age of 12, ID number 1, you know, all this kind of stuff. And you can kind of see, even though I haven't actually typed any code myself, school record has all of that code for me. And I'm using their initialize method with the record hash like this. Same thing with the staff member here. So if I call this staff equals staff.new with a new set of things. I've always wanted to be a gym teacher. I always thought that would be fun. So I am now 35, and my role is a gym teacher. My password is also password. Also, people, please do not have password as your password. You don't want to do that. Let's run. So we know that this works on the student side. Let's see if it runs on the staff side. Staff.rb. Close up again, uninitialized constant school record. We're getting more familiar with these error messages. What's going on here? Relative, same thing. Inside of staff.rb is looking for something called school record, but it doesn't exist. So I'll grab both these lines because I know I'm going to need it. And let's see if I can enter what a staff is. So if I take a look at staff here, again, I'm using that same bit of code. This is like where the power of inheritance comes in, because I have a school record. I know that it was so similar between student and staff that all I need to really change was this ID number from student ID. And now you can kind of see, like, just by inheriting from school record, I can just create brand new record. Like, I can create new students and new staff members. So I'm okay with this. I'm okay moving forward if you all are. If you need a little bit more explanation, I'm happy to do it.
Yeah, why wouldn't you just put the school records within the school class, like, or put those records within the school class?
So again, it's the idea that I want everything to do one thing. Like, of course, you can have one class that has all of these different methods, but let me demonstrate what's going to happen.
No, not create the student or
Okay.
the staff. Just put the records in the schoolhouse.
So think about this, right? A school, as in terms of a noun, does a school care about name, sex, age, role, or ID number or password? Like as a noun, like the school is an inanimate object, right? It's like a physical location. It's a building.
Yeah.
So a school by itself does not have any of these particular things.
Okay. No, what I was saying, like basically, like is have a file cabinet in the school building that everybody else can pull to. And
Okay.
yeah, that's all I was saying. Like,
so it's kind of like if I
basically the same thing you're doing, but just less classes.
fewer classes. Yeah, I mean,
we couldn't use 4 classes. I thought we could only use.
You can use as many classes as you need
excuse.
to. Yeah. So the question is, why don't I create some sort of like a school record, like method on the school class, right?
Sure. I mean,
yeah. I mean, this is a legitimate
way. A basic format of what everybody usually has.
Yeah, that's a legitimate thing to do. This is one way about going about it. I just prefer to go this way in this direction because it's like I know my school only does one thing. It just presents itself as a school. The school records are in charge of creating new school records. The staff, when you create a new staff member, you're using the initialize method of the school record so that you can reuse between 2 different classes. I'm going to comment this out just so people can see it a little bit later. I think we've finished release 0. The school doesn't really do anything besides just exist. It's a physical location. It's just there. I created the students. I created the staff. As of right now, they can't do anything, but I'm able to create each one of those things. So release number 1, build the authentication system. Now imagine you're delivering the software. It's going to run as a Ruby file in the terminal. You're going to create a single administrator who can add staff and students, and only this administrator is allowed to create these objects in the system. You also want the created staff to log in and access their grades. You shouldn't be able to access other things. This is an example of what it looks like. All right, so this is a lot of stuff. I'm not going to do all 3 at one time. I'm going to just do 1 at one time. Let's just start with this. I'm going to go inside my staff person right here. I'm going to create a single administrator who can add staff, which is teachers, janitors, etc., and students, and only this person is allowed to create things in this system. You can kind of see we have a name, sex, age, role, employee ID, and password. This looks pretty good to me. So let's just jump over here. I'm going to make this 1 to give a little bit more screen real estate. I'm going to create a single administrator. So maybe I'll do def login. And then this is going to be a lot like def grandma. Very, very similar to def grandma. So I'm just going to be like, I think they wanted me to have something that looked like this. Welcome to Bayside High. No problem. Put welcome to Bayside High. And then I'm literally just copying line by line. What's this? Please enter your username. Please enter your username. And then I will have username equals gets.chomp. Based on like, I'm going to ask you, it's going to show up, and then I'm going to get it. So let me just put a printout, you entered username. And we can just run this to see what happens. We'll go back to this in just a little bit. So I'm going to get the username from the person, and then they're going to ask me for the password. And then we'll say password. And then we'll just get to this point right here, and we'll pause real fast. welcome Richard Belding. So it's going to be welcome. Sorry. Username. Your access level is roll. So now there's going to be a bunch of issues with this. Obviously, you have staff when they log in, you have a student when they log in, you have a school, and you have a school record and all this kind of stuff. Like, do you think that this login should go in this inside the staff, or should it go somewhere else? It could be school record. Yeah, that's something.
I think you're gonna have to have a separate login for students and for staff.
That is true. You will definitely have to take two different paths when a student logs in and when a staff person logs in. But I'm actually going to argue that I'm going to create another class, which basically is just kind of like I'll call this
Admin profile.
Yeah, not admin profile. Like literally, just like what's the name of this program? Like I'm going to actually execute this program at this point.
Okay.
Well, what's it? I'll just call this schoolsoftware.rb. Whatever. Class school software. Now, the school software, I'm going to create, I'm not going to create initialize because I don't need anything. So when I run it, I expect to actually do all of this stuff. Grab this whole thing here and just dump it in place. Just s equals school software dot new dot login. Just see if it works.
Require relative here.
Maybe we'll find out. So school software, run Ruby school software .rb. Welcome to Bayside High. Please enter your username. I am John. Please enter your password 123. It says undefined method or variable role. So something is broken at this point, but we're actually able to get to. Let's just change it a little bit. Your password is whatever. Password. My password is 123. Welcome, John. Your password is 123. So we're getting a little bit closer. And this is the part where when we go back to the README here, in terms of the learning objective, it's like, how do we interface between different objects? As of right now, I'm able to create a student, be able to create new staff members and things like that, but I'm unable to save them to the database. I'm unable to see, like, check against their information and things like that. So there's something like, this is where we start talking about like single responsibility classes and everything like that. So I think at this particular point, there's something that you need to do. So when you're logging in, you get the username and the password. What happens next? Like when you fill it out, what happens next?
You have to check that against what you have on your records.
Yep, I like that. Check credentials. I have a separate method called check credentials. Def check credentials. And basically, at this point, I know that this particular method will read the CSV files, check if username and password are in there.
Interesting.
Now it's getting real interesting, right? So read the CSV files, check if the username and password are in there. Now we're getting somewhere. So I'm going to go back to.
And also take action.
Yeah, and also to do anything, right?
If it's false,
So
you kick them out.
So let's just check if maybe we'll have a check for staff and a check for students. So I'm going to do check staff, check students. And I'm just like naming random things right now. So check staff and def check students. All right, so check credentials. Do you think you need to pass any sort of method, any sort of parameters in?
Oh yeah, you need to pass in some type of name or username.
You need to pass in the username and most likely the password. I'm going to pass that in over here. Username, password. Okay. Check staff with username, password. Check students with username, password. My thought process behind this of like why I'm choosing to name my methods and variables and pass everything in this way is very simple. Like I'm going, if I wanted to get something dry cleaned at the dry cleaners, right? I walk up to the counter and I say, I want this cleaned. That's all I say. They know what to do with it on their end. I don't care what's happening underneath the hood. All I care about is I drop off my shirt. At 5 o'clock, I'm going to come pick up my shirt and my shirt is clean. You can do whatever you want with my shirt in that time. Like you can see like there's a stain on it. Maybe there's a process you do to get a stain on it. Mike, can you lower the blinds behind you? Thanks. You might need to climb up and take those clips off. Sorry. So that's one thing. It's kind of like I don't particularly care what's happening underneath the hood. All I know is when I talk with the laundromat person, like I want my shirt clean. Do whatever you want. Do whatever you need to do. Like whatever machines are open, I don't care. Like I just want my shirt clean. That's all I care about. Similarly, that's like the idea of encapsulation. Encapsulation being like I don't care what's happening underneath the hood. You can change whatever you like, but I want a specific output. So when I said I want to check the credentials, you have to check against the school CSV, the student CSV, and the staff CSV. So all I say is just check the credentials. What's happening under the hood for check credentials? I need to check the staff, and I need to check the students as well to see like who I'm talking about. You seeing an issue so far? Like maybe something we can use an adder writer for, because I'm repeating a lot of code.
Yeah, definitely some type of adder accessor.
Probably not an adder accessor, probably a reader. I'm just going to go with reader for now. How's that? So at username equals gets.chomp and at password equals gets.chomp. And then once I create those as instance variables, I'm going to create that as a username up here and password. This small little bit of code takes away all of this.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I don't know if you can you just do an example where, let's say, for instance, one of the software functionalities is to change the password.
We can do that, but we'll get there after we check. Like this, that's like 3.0, like software 3.0. Right now, we're still on software 1.0, where we just want to check whether or not this person is legitimate or not legitimate. So I need to check the staff. I need to check the students. So check the staff. So I know I need to read a CSV file. And let's just put a binding pry right here. We're going to do a require pry up top. Require CSV, because I know I need that as well. And let's just do check staff. Yeah, let's just see what we get. I'm going to run school software. John, my password is 123. Something is broken.
You erase the username and password for check credentials.
Oh, okay.
On 20.
Thank you. John, 123. I'm here inside of check staff. All right, so let's take a look if I can see what my username is. Good, and my password. Using my adder readers, I can just call it directly, so I don't need to keep passing in things over and over again. It's the idea behind object orientation. So before, if you remember, I was like passing in username and password, passing in username and password all the way here and here and here. So I repeated that same line of code 6 times. And now we're starting to see like the power of the adder reader. I have access to that username and password everywhere within this class. So I want to, at this point, read from the CSV staff. So I know it's something like csv.read. I think it's staff.csv. Let's just copy this and see what happens. All right, we have something like that. So using our skills, let's say a equals underscore, we have all of the records, we have the username, and we have the password. So it goes against the name here and the password. So it's like, how do I check whether or not this is right?
You have to iterate through the record.
Correct.
And check first index
Yep.
is the username.
Yep.
And then and that also that last index is also like their password.
That's pretty much it. You have to go through each one of these records, find the row where the username is whatever you enter, and then see if the password matches up. And if there's something there, great. If there's not something there, we're not going to do anything. So I'm going to say staff records equals csv.read, and I will do staff records multi-dimensional array, which means I need to iterate over each one of these. And then from there, I need to select, okay, I don't like using multi-dimensional arrays. I'm not a big fan of this. So there's something I want to turn on called headers true CSV. Let's actually just test it.
I was going to say, I'm sorry, what if there's like 10,000 records processing, looping through every single one?
Yeah.
Exactly.
So you all are used to something called csv.read without this header is true, right? And then you get a multi-dimensional array that comes out. If you do csv.read with the first argument being the name of the file and headers equal to true, it actually turns it from an array of arrays to a CSV table, which includes CSV rows. So if I do staff records.count, there are 6 records. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And it says the header is true means I'm taking this first row and saying these are the headers for all of them. So if I grab the first staff record, actually a CSV row object, and I can just call .name on it. Oh, whoops. And then I can also do the same thing with password. Yeah, so instead of iterating through an array of arrays, I can treat this like an actual object, which is really nice. So I'm just going to grab this for now.
That would have been helpful on Monday, John.
Yeah, no, that's actually a good point. No, you're correct. I should put that in there. Maybe CSV read headers. I'll add that in. That's a good point. Again, each class gets better than the last one. All right, so I have the staff records, and I'm just going to basically iterate over each one of them. Each do staff record, singular. If staff record of name is equal to the username, and staff record of the password is equal to the password that you passed in, I'm going to return, I think their role was what they wanted, right? Because it was like, hi, Richard Belding, your access level is principal. Let's take a look. We have receptionist. So I have access to get to role. Return staff record role. And I'll do the same thing over here. Students.
When you do a CSV .read, does it automatically only use does it automatically only take one line at a time when you do an each?
Yes.
Also on 35, you got to change the file name.
Good catch.
Yeah.
So does this make sense so far? So I have a class called school software. Like this school software, all it does is just run the software. Maybe I'll just call this run. right? Maybe my first, this method is starting to get a little bit large. Agreed? So maybe I'll do login first. Login. So obviously there's gonna be more things than just login, but that's what we're doing right now. So I'm just gonna, when I run the software, first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna log in. So I have this nice little thing. Welcome to Bayside High. Enter your username and your password. I'm setting those equal to instance variables, which will make them adder readers up here, which means I have access to them everywhere else within this class. So I want to see like your access level is blah. So I need to check the credentials to see whether or not, even if they're logged in or not. So let's assume that we are logging in with the right people. So I get the username, I get the password. I'm basically to see like, what role are you? So welcome, whatever your username is, your access level is result. So this check credentials will check against staff and check against students. Let's see what we get. I'm pretty sure this won't run, but here's to hoping. So I'm going to do staff.csv. So I'll be Culpepper and the password is XX. Culpepper, X. Something breaks. It says check credentials, wrong number of arguments given to expected 0. Did I mess something up?
Yeah, there's still one.
Oh, I'm sorry. One more time. Culpepper, XX. Welcome, Culpepper. Your access level is names. That's probably not correct. It's a result of this each loop right here. So let's just say role equals nothing, and I'll just say role equals that, and I just return role out. Let's try this one more time. Culpepper, and I'm XX. Welcome, Culpepper. Your name, man, something is very wrong here.
Shouldn't it be return it like within the loop? Because if you do it out the loop, it's after everything.
I am returning within the loop. I'm just setting the variable and then returning the variable. I think it has something to do with check staff and check students.
I think it has something to do with the CSV library in general. Like
it's not. I don't believe it to be that, and we can verify it right here. Let's throw a binding pry above line 39 and see what we get. Culpepper. And let's take a look at what role is. Role is principal. So I actually am able to get to the principal correctly, but the result is your access level is name, sex, age, and this is important, student ID and password. So what's happening? Like, where do you think it's blowing up? Where's that disconnect?
Well,
In fact,
it's actually printing the entire table.
printing the entire table. Let me actually try one more thing. The binding pry right here. Culpepper. X. Okay.
School records or student records.
it would sound like the person is complaining about not having a satellite bounce my Twitter feed or whatever off of, fast enough. But I think the CSV library probably needs, I hope they roll out something,
Not that. It is not that. It's the issue right here because I'm checking the staff first and then I'm checking the students. So I check the staff, it returns, but then it goes to student. Obviously it hits nothing, but this student records.each actually returns the whole thing to begin with. So I need a bunch of if checks here. So if check staff gives me anything, yeah, I don't know. How do I write this correctly? This is like some of those design decisions now we have to think of. So I get the username, I get the password, and I want to see what the result is when I check the credentials. If checks, let's say staff equals, I don't know. how do I write this? It's basically if this returns anything, if check staff returns anything, return that and stop. Else, students.
If it returns a string greater than string length greater than 1, or greater or equal to 1.
Okay, I could do that. Let me do a return nil just in case.
I did an until loop.
Until loop. I mean, both of these are going to work. Until and each both work here. So if check staff returns anything, so if check staff dot nil equals false, I don't know. See if this does anything. We'll find out. Cool. All right, we got to this point. What happens if I take these nils out? We get to a different area. Employee ID. Yeah, you need the nils here. So the issue with .each is that it returns something at the end. That something is all of these little bits of code. I want to return nil if I don't get a name, so that I'm not printing out all of this right here, because it says welcome John, your access level is all of this kind of stuff. If I run it now with these nils in here, if I do John of 1, 2, 3, welcome John, your access level is nothing. So I do want these nils at the end, because if it returns, then I'm done. If it goes through it, then I want to return nil, please.
I'm not understanding. Why would, if you have a dot read, it's returning something, it has to return a record every hour, it has to return what it reads every time? Like,
so CSV.read is literally the method to read a CSV file.
Yeah. And
I save that to staff records. And then when you iterate within each loop on anything, your result is going to look like the entire thing, which is why it comes out like this. Your access level is blah, all this type of stuff, because the output of a .each loop is the entire contents of the staff records.
Is there a find method?
Is there a find method? Let's find
If
out.
you're looking at a text file, you'd use find. Imagine if there was, you can't go looping through every row.
Again, this is a predecessor to like a precursor to SQL. So on SQL, we don't have to worry about this at all, but on CSV stuff, we have to worry about this for right now. We haven't gotten to SQL quite yet, but that's a good point. There is no find method, unfortunately.
So you could iterate through into index equals.
Yeah.
Just the nil thing, I think, is working now. Right?
It is working now, yeah.
I think we're good.
So basically, it's like if check staff is equal to false, like if there's a somebody for the staff, return me the staff person. If there's a student, I'm going to check the student. So let's take a look if I can get a staff and a student. So we just got a staff. I did Culpepper. Welcome Culpepper, your access level is principal. Let's see if I can get to the student at this point. I'm going to call it Zach and XX. Welcome, Zach, your access level is student. So I'm able to access both of them. But what happens if I am John with 1, 2, 3? I'm not on either one of the lists. Shouldn't I say no? Like, don't come in here?
Or enter a valid.
Yeah. I think what I do.
Is a semicolon on 39, is that shorthand for else? Or?
So the semicolon on 39 and 48, the semicolon is basically saying like, like if I didn't have this, the output is literally all of the contents. But
Kinda
have
like JavaScript, like they have a semicolon to line end. It's like he put nil on the next line. That's just what comes out.
Okay.
this
I
is just shorthand for this.
Okay. Oh.
So if the check staff, let's just do this. Staff credential. Actually, we won't prematurely optimize. So if there's no students, else if check students nil is equal to false, return check students, else you are not authorized.
Need that question mark on it now?
John, 1, 2, 3. Welcome, John. Your access level is you are not authorized. Well, I mean, that's something. And we can go back and do a whole bunch of if-else checks just to make sure, like, it doesn't say your access level is you are not authorized. Like, you could conditionally change this if you'd like. But this is where I'm, like, starting to, this is where, like, I would start doing things. It's 12 o'clock. Do people want to take a quick break and me continue? No? Okay.
Continue.
Well, I'm going to take a break either way.
Let's continue.
All right, let's take a 7-minute break until 12:05. We'll come back. We'll go until 12:30, and then we'll stop there.
Sorry, they're speedy.
Yes, I need to use the restroom.
This is the guy that stabs at the water cooler.